Deep in the vastness of space, aboard the massive command ship Dominion, Commander Black stood watching as another civilization burned. His species, the Ravagers, had just conquered their 1,000th world. The violet-skinned beings below had fought bravely with their advanced plasma weapons and energy shields, but like all others before them, they had fallen. The Ravagers were perfect killing machines. Their black, armored bodies could withstand extreme temperatures and radiation. Their natural weapons, retractable claws and reinforced bone structure, made them deadly even without technology. But their greatest strength was their shared consciousness, a hive mind that let them think and act as one. Commander Black's second-in-command, Officer White, approached with their daily report. The planet's defenses have been completely destroyed. Their leaders are begging for mercy. Mercy. Black's mouth twisted into what passed for a smile among their kind. The strong do not show mercy. The strong rule. That is the law of the universe. Through their shared mind link, every Ravager on the planet felt his cruel amusement. The violet beings below had technology that could have made them valuable allies. But the Ravagers didn't want allies. They wanted subjects. Slaves. Food. In their 10,000 years of expansion, they had never met a species they couldn't defeat. Unusual energy readings from Sector 7, Officer White reported. Our long-range scouts have detected a new solar system. 8 planets. One shows signs of civilization. Black turned away from the viewing screen showing the burning world below. Technology level. Primitive. They still used fossil fuels. Their space exploration is limited to their own moon and nearby planets. They communicate using electronic signals and rely on basic digital systems. Through the hive mind, Black felt the collective dismissal of his species. Such primitive beings weren't worth their attention, but something about this report caught his interest. Population. Over 7 billion on a single planet. Now that was interesting. Most species spread across multiple worlds before reaching such numbers. To have so many on one planet meant these beings were either extremely adaptable or too primitive to leave their world. Either way, they would make excellent slaves. Send a scout team, Black ordered. Standard procedure. Assess their military capability, identify their leaders, and prepare for harvest. The scout ship launched immediately, crewed by 20 of their finest warriors. Through the hive mind, Black watched their approach to the blue-green planet. It was beautiful, he had to admit. Oceans covered most of its surface, with green and brown landmasses scattered across it like paint drops on canvas. The scouts entered the atmosphere at night, cloaking systems active. They chose a landing spot in what appeared to be a military installation in a region the natives called North America. Black watched through their shared consciousness as they prepared for their first contact with this primitive species. The beings they observed were soft-looking creatures. Pink or brown skin, no natural armor, no claws, no apparent physical advantages. They walked on 2 legs and used crude projectile weapons. Through the hive mind, the Ravagers shared their contempt. This would be easier than they thought. But as Commander Black observed these beings through the scout's eyes, something bothered him. These creatures moved differently from any species they had encountered. Each one moved independently, unpredictably. There was no pattern to their behavior, no unified purpose to their actions. Their brains are isolated, Officer White noted. Each one thinks independently. A weakness, Black replied, but something in his tone suggested uncertainty. In all their conquests, they had never encountered a successful species that didn't share some form of collective consciousness. How have these primitive, individually thinking beings managed to build a civilization? He pushed the thought aside. It didn't matter. They were primitive, and the Ravagers were the apex predators of the universe. These humans, as they called themselves, would fall like all the others. The scout team moved into position, ready to begin their assessment of Earth's defenses. Commander Black settled in to watch through the hive mind, unaware that he was about to witness something that would shake the foundations of everything his species believed. The Ravager scout team moved through the darkness of the military base with perfect coordination. Their cloaking technology made them nearly invisible as they slipped past human guards who had no idea death walked among them. Officer Gray led the team, mentally cataloging the primitive weapons he observed. Projectile firearms, he communicated through the hive mind. Explosive-based, inefficient, no energy weapons detected. The 20 Ravagers spread out across the base, studying everything from the simple chain-link fences to the basic computer systems. These humans relied on individual terminals and separate data networks, a laughably inefficient approach compared to the Ravagers' biological computing and shared consciousness. In the command center of the military base, Lieutenant Miller stared at the security monitors with growing concern. The night vision cameras showed strange distortions moving across the compound, almost like heat waves, but more defined in shape. "Something's not right," he said to Sergeant Jones. "Check the motion sensors on the east perimeter." Jones tapped at his keyboard. "They're registering movement, but cameras show nothing there." Miller's jaw tightened. During his 3 tours in combat zones, he'd developed a sixth sense for danger. Sound the silent alarm. Get the response team ready. Meanwhile, Officer Gray had found what appeared to be the base's weapons storage. The Ravagers needed to assess human military capability firsthand. He signaled to his team to decloak and secure the area. As their cloaking fields dropped, 6 Ravagers appeared in the middle of the armory. Tall, black-armored beings with 4 arms and heads that resembled sleek, eyeless helmets. The single human guard barely had time to gasp before one Ravager struck him, intending to take a prisoner for study. But the human's body was more fragile than expected. The blow that would have merely stunned most species killed the guard instantly. Officer Gray felt annoyance ripple through the hive mind. Now they would need another specimen. The silent alarm had done its job. Lieutenant Miller led a 12-person tactical team toward the armory, their footsteps silent on the concrete floor. They had no idea what they were facing, but years of training had prepared them for the unexpected. When Miller's team reached the armory and saw the alien creatures examining their weapons, there was a moment of shocked silence. Then training kicked in. "Open fire," Miller ordered. The humans' projectile weapons seemed primitive to the Ravagers, but the bullets struck with surprising force. 2 Ravagers fell immediately, their armor penetrated by the simple lid projectiles. The hive mind rippled with shock, not just at the unexpected effectiveness of the weapons, but at the humans' reaction time. There had been no communication between them that the Ravagers could detect, no shared decision-making, yet they attacked with perfect coordination. Each human fired at a different target, without overlapping. It was as if they had planned the attack, but they couldn't have known the Ravagers were there. Officer Gray ordered a counterattack, expecting the humans to flee when faced with superior strength and technology. Instead, the humans adjusted their tactics instantly. When they saw their standard bullets weren't always effective, some switched to shotguns from nearby racks. The scatter of high-velocity pellets tore through Ravager armor at close range. Through the hive mind, Commander Black watched in growing alarm from the distant command ship. This wasn't following the usual pattern. The scout team's casualties were mounting rapidly. "Retreat," he ordered. "Return to the ship." But retreat wasn't so simple. The humans had surrounded the armory and were showing unexpected tactical flexibility. When the Ravagers tried to reactivate their cloaking fields, one human tossed a fire extinguisher into the room and sprayed the contents, revealing their outlines in the white powder. Officer Gray made it out with only 8 survivors from his original 20. As they raced toward their concealed scout ship, he sent detailed observations through the hive mind. The humans were physically weak but unnervingly unpredictable. Their technology was primitive but strangely effective. As the damaged scout ship lifted off, Commander Black received the final casualty report with disbelief. 12 elite Ravager warriors killed by creatures who had barely mastered space travel. It was unprecedented. "These humans," Officer White said, They don't fight like other species. Commander Black's response rippled through the hive mind. Then we will have to teach them how the apex predators of the universe deal with resistance. Commander Black paced the length of the Dominion strategy chamber. The surviving scout team members stood at attention, their shared consciousness radiating shame at their unexpected defeat. "Explain again," Black demanded, his voice cold. "How did creatures with such primitive technology defeat our elite warriors?" Officer Gray stepped forward, his normally perfect posture slightly hunched from healing injuries. "Commander, the humans fight differently. They make decisions instantly, without coordination, yet somehow work together effectively." The massive chamber's walls displayed images of the humans captured during the brief engagement. Black studied their soft features, their fragile bodies. Nothing about them suggested they should be formidable opponents. "The autopsy results on the human we recovered," Officer White reported, gesturing to a holographic display of a human brain. "Their neural structure is entirely self-contained. No biological transmitters, no shared consciousness pathways. A severe evolutionary disadvantage," Black stated, but with less certainty than before. "Perhaps not," said Chief Scientist Green, who had been silent until now. Green was one of the few Ravagers whose role required some capacity for independent thought. "Their isolation may give them an advantage we hadn't considered." Black turned sharply. "Explain." "Our strength has always been our unity," Green said, indicating the hive mind that connected all Ravagers. "But unity creates predictability. These humans, each thinks independently, creates unique solutions. When one human found our cloaking ineffective against their powder substance, they didn't need to communicate this to others. Each human observed and adapted individually." A wave of discomfort rippled through the hive mind. The very idea challenged everything the Ravagers believed about evolutionary superiority. "There's more," Green continued. "Their emotional responses appear to enhance rather than hinder their combat effectiveness. Fear triggers increased physical capabilities. Anger improves their focus rather than clouding it." Black absorbed this information, sharing his thoughts with all Ravagers present. "So they are unpredictable, adaptable, and their primitive emotions serve them in battle. Still, they are just one planet against our empire." "There is one more concern," Green said hesitantly. "We've analyzed their global communication networks. They create constantly new ideas, new technologies, new strategies. Their lack of collective consciousness forces each human to think uniquely. Their entire history is filled with warfare against themselves, developing countless methods of killing." The chamber fell silent. Through the hive mind, Black felt something he had rarely experienced from his species: fear. On Earth, the nations of the world were in chaos. Footage of the alien encounter had leaked despite military efforts to contain it. In an emergency United Nations meeting, Lieutenant Miller briefed world leaders on what they had learned. "They communicate telepathically," Miller explained, standing before the assembly. "They move as one unit, but they weren't prepared for our weapons or tactics." General Thompson of the United States Joint Chiefs stood up. "You're saying we hurt them with conventional weapons?" "Yes, sir. Standard rifles were effective at close range. They have advanced technology, but seem physically unprepared for our style of combat." Across the globe, military forces mobilized. Scientists examined recovered alien technology. What humans lacked in unified purpose, they made up for in creative problem-solving. In a classified laboratory, Dr. Rivers studied tissue samples from the fallen aliens. "Their cellular structure is remarkable," she told her team. "But look at this." She pointed to a microscopic structure within the alien cells. "This appears to be some kind of biological transmitter, the physical basis for their hive mind." One of her colleagues, Dr. Bell, leaned forward excitedly. "If we could disrupt that." "Exactly," Rivers nodded. "A targeted electromagnetic pulse might not just disable their technology. It could disrupt their very ability to think as one." Back on the Dominion, Commander Black had made his decision. "Prepare the invasion fleet," he ordered. We will commit 1,000 warships to this planet. Officer White seemed concerned. Such a large force for one primitive world. These humans are dangerous precisely because they are primitive, Black replied. They think in ways we cannot predict. Better to crush them completely than risk further surprises. As the Ravager fleet prepared for war, neither side fully understood what was coming. The deadliest species in the universe was about to face humanity, not just human weapons, but human ingenuity, human unpredictability, and most dangerously, human determination. The Ravager invasion began with a thunderous display of power. 1,000 warships entered Earth's atmosphere simultaneously, their massive hulls breaking through clouds and casting mile-long shadows over cities worldwide. Humanity's first global war had begun. Commander Black directed the attack from the Dominion, his consciousness linked to every Ravager soldier. Target their military installations first, he ordered. Then communication centers. Cut off their ability to coordinate. The initial assault was devastating. Ravager plasma weapons turned military bases to ash. Their gravity bombs collapsed skyscrapers. Their scout ships hunted down fleeing vehicles with cold efficiency. Yet something was wrong. Commander, Officer White reported, casualty reports are higher than projected. Black accessed the battle data through the hive mind and found disturbing patterns. Humans were using their environment in unexpected ways. In New York, they had flooded subway tunnels to short-circuit Ravager ground troops. In Moscow, they had rigged buildings to collapse on advancing forces. In Tokyo, they had repurposed civilian vehicles as explosive traps. They lack unity but compensate with adaptability, Black observed. Each human resistance cell operates independently, making them difficult to predict or eliminate completely. 3 days into the invasion, the Ravagers controlled most major cities. Victory seemed certain. Then everything changed. General Thompson stood in the underground command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, military leaders from 30 nations watched as Dr. Rivers unveiled humanity's first counterweapon. We call it the Disruptor, Rivers explained, revealing a device no larger than a microwave oven. It emits a specific electromagnetic frequency that interferes with the aliens' biological communication system, their hive mind. How effective is it? Asked the Chinese general. In laboratory tests, it completely isolated alien tissue samples from receiving signals, Rivers replied. In the field, we believe it will create confusion, possibly even pain. Mass produce them, General Thompson ordered. Every resistance cell gets one. The first disruptor was deployed in Chicago. As Ravager troops marched through the abandoned downtown, resistance fighters activated the device from a nearby basement. The effect was immediate and horrifying. 20 Ravager soldiers suddenly clutched their heads, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. Some fired wildly at invisible threats. Others collapsed, overwhelmed by the sudden isolation of their thoughts. Across the planet, humans began fighting back with renewed hope. The disruptors weren't just weapons, they were psychological warfare. For the first time in their history, Ravagers experienced true individuality, and it terrified them. On the Dominion, Commander Black felt these losses with growing alarm. Each disconnected Ravager created a hole in the hive mind, a dead spot that caused pain to those still connected. They'd weaponized our greatest strength against us, he told his officers. We must adapt. Officer White suggested, we could modify our troops' neural patterns to resist the human weapon. That would require weakening our hive connection, Black replied, the very idea disturbing him deeply. It may be necessary for victory, said Chief Scientist Green. As the Ravagers struggled to adapt, humanity pushed its advantage. In laboratories around the world, scientists reverse-engineered captured alien technology. They couldn't match Ravager sophistication, but human creativity found unexpected applications. In an Australian outback facility, engineers converted Ravager gravity generators into shields that could deflect plasma weapons. In Brazil, scientists adapted alien power cells to create portable energy weapons. In India, doctors used Ravager medical technology to develop rapid healing treatments for wounded soldiers. 6 weeks into the war, the tide was turning. Ravager forces still held territorial advantage, but they were losing the technological race. Humans didn't need to match alien advancement. They just needed to adapt it in ways the Ravagers couldn't anticipate. During a fierce battle in the ruins of London, Lieutenant Miller led a squad equipped with the latest counterweapons. They moved through the rubble silently, disruptors ready. When they encountered a Ravager patrol, Miller gave a silent hand signal. The disruptors activated, and the alien soldiers immediately began to falter. As the connection to their hive mind weakened, the humans attacked with modified weapons that penetrated Ravager armor with ease. Commander Black felt each death ripple through the collective consciousness. For the first time in his long life, he considered a disturbing possibility. The Ravagers, the apex predators of the universe, might actually lose this war. Through the hive mind, he issued new orders. Bring the Worldbreaker. The Worldbreaker emerged from hyperspace like a dark moon, casting a shadow across Earth's orbit. The massive weapon ship dwarfed even the Dominion, its central cannon capable of cracking a planet's crust. Prepare targeting systems, Commander Black ordered. We will show these humans the price of resistance. But as the Ravagers readied their ultimate weapon, something unexpected happened. Alarms blared throughout the fleet as radar detected approaching vessels, human vessels, rising from Earth on pillars of fire. Impossible, Officer White whispered. The humans had reverse-engineered Ravager propulsion systems in mere weeks, creating crude but functional spacecraft. In a converted aircraft carrier off the coast of Japan, Dr. Rivers and her international team monitored the launch of humanity's makeshift space fleet. 50 ships, cobbled together from Ravager technology and human ingenuity, accelerated toward the alien armada. Remember, General Thompson told the pilots over the comm system, you don't need to destroy their ships. Just get close enough to deploy the enhanced disruptors. The enhanced disruptor was humanity's latest breakthrough, a more powerful version that could affect Ravagers across greater distances. Each human ship carried one, designed to create overlapping fields that would isolate entire Ravager vessels from their hive mind. Commander Black watched the approaching human ships with confusion. Their design was chaotic, unoptimized, with none of the sleek efficiency of Ravager vessels. Yet they moved with surprising speed and unpredictable patterns that made them difficult targets. Destroy them, he ordered. Ravager warships fired plasma cannons, but the human vessels split into smaller groups, weaving and dodging in random patterns. They shouldn't have been able to coordinate such complex maneuvers without the efficiency of a hive mind, yet somehow they did. Captain Reed piloted the lead human ship, a converted oil tanker fitted with alien engines. Group 3, break left. Group 2, create interference. Each pilot made split-second decisions, their individual creativity allowing them to react faster than the perfectly coordinated but predictable Ravager fleet. The human ships reached deployment range. Activate disruptors, Reed commanded. 50 enhanced disruptors powered up simultaneously, creating a wave of destruction that swept through the Ravager fleet. The effect was catastrophic. Ship after ship lost formation as crews suddenly experienced individuality for the first time. Aboard the Dominion, Commander Black fell to his knees as the hive-mind connection weakened. Around him, officers struggled with the overwhelming sensation of isolation. What is happening to us? Officer White gasped, experiencing true fear as an individual for the first time. Black fought through the disorientation. Protect the Worldbreaker. But it was too late. 3 human ships had reached the massive weapon, attaching themselves to its hull. They weren't trying to destroy it. They were boarding it. Lieutenant Miller led the boarding team, dressed in modified Ravager armor. Remember your training, he told his multinational squad. Hit them with portable disruptors first, then secure the bridge. The humans cut through the Worldbreaker's hull and poured inside. The Ravager crew, already disoriented by the enhanced disruptors, couldn't mount an effective defense. Each Ravager now fought alone, without the tactical advantages of shared consciousness. On Earth, united human forces launched their ground offensive. Soldiers equipped with reverse-engineered Ravager weapons and portable disruptors pushed alien forces back from major cities. The Ravagers, cut off from the hive mind, retreated in disarray. After 3 hours of fighting, Miller's team reached the World Breaker's bridge. Weapon systems secured. He reported back to Earth. We've taken control. In the United Nations Emergency Headquarters, world leaders received the news with stunned silence. Are you saying we've captured their planet killer? General Thompson asked. Yes, sir, Miller replied. And something else. We've accessed their navigation system. We have the coordinates of the Ravager homeworld. Dr. Rivers leaned forward. And their biological data. Did you find it? Everything, Doctor. Their complete biological database. Every weakness, every strength. Commander Black was brought to the World Breakers detention center in restraints. Through the weakened hive mind, he felt the despair of his species. Their perfect unity, once their greatest strength, had become their downfall. General Thompson addressed the emergency UN session. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time since this war began, we have the advantage. It's time to take the fight to them. The vote was unanimous. Earth would launch its counterattack. The captured World Breaker, renamed Humanity's Hope, led Earth's makeshift fleet through hyperspace. 100 ships followed in formation, carrying soldiers from every nation and powerful disruptors modified to work at planetary scale. Lieutenant Miller stood on the bridge, now the ship's captain by unanimous vote of the United Nations Space Command. Beside him, Officer White, the captured Ravager officer who had chosen to help humanity after experiencing the freedom of individual thought. We're approaching Ragnar, the first Ravager colony world, White said, still struggling with the concept of speaking aloud rather than communicating through the hive mind. Miller nodded. Prepare the Global Disruptor. The Global Disruptor was Dr. Rivers' masterpiece, a device capable of severing an entire planet's connection to the Ravager hive mind. The plan wasn't to destroy Ravager worlds, but to liberate them from collective consciousness. The Ravagers on Ragnar will resist, White warned. The isolation, it's terrifying at first. That's why we bring hope, not just weapons, Miller replied. He turned to the communications officer. Prepare the broadcast message. Earth's fleet emerged from hyperspace above Ragnar, a red-tinged world covered in industrial complexes. Ravager defense ships immediately moved to intercept, but they were slow and predictable compared to the human vessels. Captain Reed led the fighter squadron, piloting a craft that combined Ravager technology with human instinct. Remember the pattern, he told his pilots. Random evasive maneuvers, don't be predictable. The human fighters danced between plasma beams, confusing the Ravager pilots who couldn't comprehend such chaotic flight patterns. Meanwhile, humanity's hope moved into position above Ragnar's northern hemisphere. Global Disruptor at full power, reported the weapons officer. Miller took a deep breath. Activate. The massive device hummed to life, sending invisible waves across the planet's surface. On Ragnar, millions of Ravagers suddenly clutched their heads as the hive-mind connection shattered. Confusion turned to panic, then to something most Ravagers had never experienced, individual thought. Broadcast our message, Miller ordered. Every communication device on Ragnar began playing a simple message, translated by Officer White into the Ravager language. People of Ragnar, we come not as conquerors, but as liberators. The hive mind has enslaved your thoughts. Experience freedom. Choose your own path. The message included testimonials from Ravagers, like White, who had adapted to individual consciousness and found it empowering rather than frightening. On the planet below, something remarkable happened. Instead of chaotic violence, many Ravagers simply stopped fighting. Some gathered in groups, experiencing their first independent conversations. Others sat alone, discovering personal thoughts. The military forces are surrendering. White reported with wonder. They're choosing peace. Not all Ravagers accepted the change. Commander Red, the planetary governor, led loyal forces in a desperate counterattack against the human fleet. But without the coordination of the hive mind, their efforts were disorganized and easily repelled. As Ragnar fell, word spread throughout the Ravager Empire. On dozen worlds, enslaved species who had lived under Ravager domination for centuries saw their opportunity. Rebellions erupted across the galaxy, inspired by Earth's example. The planet Corvus, home to six-limbed beings called the Trell, overthrew their Ravager overseers within days. The crystalline Son, long forced to mine their own world for Ravager war machines, destroyed the orbital stations that had monitored them. The silicon-based Voth, whose computational abilities had been harnessed for Ravager battle calculations, reprogrammed defense systems to target their oppressors. 3 weeks into the counteroffensive, Earth's fleet had liberated 7 Ravager worlds and made contact with 23 formerly subjugated species. Each victory weakened the Ravager hive mind further, creating a cascading effect that spread freedom across the galaxy. On the Ravager throne world, Supreme Leader Purple felt his empire crumbling. The hive mind, once spanning thousands of worlds, now barely connected a dozen core planets. For the first time in Ravager history, their leadership experienced doubt. Lieutenant Miller stood on Humanity's Hope's observation deck, watching as representatives from liberated species arrived for the first Galactic Council meeting. The diversity was stunning. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and compositions, united by their newly won freedom. "We're ready for the final push," General Thompson told him via holographic communication from Earth. "The Ravager homeworld is next." Miller nodded solemnly. Not for revenge. For liberation. The greatest irony wasn't lost on anyone. The deadliest species in the universe had been defeated not by superior weapons, but by the gift of individual thought. The Ravager homeworld, Dominion Prime, orbited a dying red star. Unlike the industrial colonies, this planet gleamed with twisted spires and massive monuments celebrating 10,000 years of conquest. At its center stood the Hive Tower, the biological transmitter that strengthened the species' collective consciousness. Earth's fleet, now joined by ships from 24 liberated species, surrounded the planet in a silent blockade. No weapons fired. No threats were made. They simply waited. Lieutenant Miller, now Admiral Miller by vote of the Galactic Council, stood on Humanity's Hope's bridge. Beside him were representatives of formerly enslaved species, the crystalline Son ambassador, the 6-limbed Trell general, and Officer White, who now called himself simply James. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. The view screen activated, showing Supreme Leader Purple for the first time. Unlike other Ravagers, his skin had a purple tint, and his eyes, 4 of them, blinked independently. "Humans." Purple's voice was cold. "You have turned the galaxy against us. You have broken our connection to countless worlds. What more do you want?" Miller stepped forward. "We want freedom. For everyone. Including your people." Purple laughed, a harsh sound. "Freedom? Our species evolved beyond your concept of freedom millennia ago. Unity is strength. Individual thought is chaos. Then why are you afraid of it?" Miller asked simply. The question hung in the air. Through the weakened hive mind, Purple felt something he couldn't quite identify, doubt spreading among his people. James stepped forward. "Supreme Leader, I was Officer White of your fleet. I thought as you did, that individuality was weakness. I was wrong. Each mind thinking independently creates possibilities the hive mind could never imagine." "Traitor," Purple hissed. "No," James replied calmly. "For the first time, I am truly loyal. To myself, to what I believe is right." Miller nodded to Dr. Rivers, who had joined the fleet after completing her greatest work. "We're not here to destroy your world. We're here to give you a choice." The super disruptor powered up, its energy building slowly. Unlike previous versions, this device wouldn't forcibly sever the hive mind. Instead, it would create a field where individual ravagers could choose to disconnect or remain united. Your choice, Supreme Leader, Miller said. Allow your people to decide for themselves, or we will be forced to take more direct action. Purple's eyes narrowed. You would destroy our world. No, Miller shook his head. That would make us no better than you were, but we have the combined forces of 27 species who remember your cruelty. Don't force our hand. On Dominion Prime, the Ravager Leadership Council debated furiously through their shared consciousness. Some argued for fighting to the death. Others, having felt the growing weakness of the hive mind, wondered if adaptation might be necessary. Without warning, Purple made his decision. Activate planetary defenses. We will die as one before living as many. Massive weapons platforms emerged from Dominion Prime's surface, targeting the Allied fleet. But before they could fire, something unexpected happened. Throughout the planet, millions of Ravagers simultaneously rejected Purple's command. The strain on the hive mind was too great. It shattered, not from the super disruptor, but from within, from the collective desire of countless Ravagers to make their own choice. The planetary defenses powered down. The hive tower's lights flickered and went dark. "What's happening?" Miller asked. James smiled, tears in his eyes. They're choosing freedom. All of them, together, made their first individual choice, to be individuals. The Galactic Council's landing party arrived at the hive tower 6 hours later. They found Supreme Leader Purple alone in the central chamber, his connection to his species severed. "What happens now?" he asked quietly, sounding lost. Miller extended his hand. "Now you join us, not as rulers or subjects, but as equals." 1 year later, the new Galactic Alliance held its first formal Congress. Representatives from 34 species, including the Ravagers, gathered to establish laws that would protect both individual rights and collective security. James, now the Ravager representative, addressed the assembly. "My species believed that being the deadliest made us superior. We were wrong. Humanity showed us that true strength comes from diversity of thought, from creativity, from the beautiful chaos of individual minds working together by choice." Admiral Miller watched from the observation gallery as the former enemies became allies. The humans hadn't conquered the deadliest species in the universe. They had transformed them, not through destruction, but through the most powerful force in existence, the freedom to choose one's own path.